Hi students, welcome to another session of Manifested Online Classes. My name is Joseph Kimani, lecturer for Financial Reporting and Analysis. So in this session, I want us we continue with topic number 3 with a special focus on subtopic number 5 regarding presentation or preparation of financial statement by cooperative societies. But before you look on the financial statement which a cooperative society need to prepare at the end of the year, we need to know what is a cooperative society, why is a cooperative society formed, and so on. Now, a cooperative society basically refers to an association or an organization which is formed in order to promote the economic well-being of its members. Basically, what that means is that a cooperative society here is not formed in order to provide services or basically in order to sell some goods now to the members of the public with an objective of making profit. So meaning that a cooperative society here is actually formed in order to promote now the economic well-being of the members. So therefore you can say that a cooperative society yes. So therefore in that case you're saying that a cooperative society here will be formed will be formed in order to do what? To promote now the economic well-being of its members and not to provide services or basically to sell goods now to the members of the public in order to do what? To make profit. So mean that whenever, for example, maybe a number of individuals come together, they decide to form something like a circle. Basically, a circle is a good example of a cooperative society. And we know that those particular members will be forming that particular circle in order to make some savings. And if one of the member maybe require a small loan, then he can be able to come to that particular circle and be able to do what? To borrow that particular money. So meaning that the objective of forming that circle is to promote now the economic well-being, to promote now the economic welfare of who? Of the members. Now, whenever a cooperative society is to be formed, a cooperative society is formed and also registered in accordance with something called the Cooperative Societies Act. And basically, once a cooperative society has been registered in accordance with that particular act, then it is recognized as a legal entity, meaning that a cooperative society do have the same status just like a company. A cooperative society can be able to own property. It do have what we refer as a contractual capacity. It can enter into contract on its own name. It can sue or be sued. It can own property and so on. So therefore, a cooperative society do have the same status, just like what? Just like a company. It is a legal entity. Now, according to the Cooperative Societies Act, we have 3 types of cooperative societies which can be registered or which can be formed in accordance with that particular what? Act. So therefore, in this case, we can look on the different types of cooperative societies. Types of cooperative societies which may be registered in accordance with what we refer as the Cooperative Societies Act. Number 1, we have something called a primary society. A primary society. So when talk about the primary society, this refers to any cooperative society which is formed by individual members. And according to the Cooperative Societies Act, for this particular cooperative society to be formed, it must be formed by a minimum of 10 qualified persons. And actually, for a person to qualify to be a member of a cooperative society, according to the Cooperative Societies Act, such a person need to have attained the age of 18 years. Number 2 is that such a person must be a resident or basically must own land within the cooperative society's area of what? Of operation. And number 3 is that that particular person must be within the profession, within the employment within which now the cooperative society is operating. So mean that if, for example, a cooperative society is formed like a coffee farmers, for any person to qualify to be a member, then such a person must be a coffee what? A farmer. So therefore, it is important to note that primary societies are those particular cooperative societies here, which we are saying are formed by individual members. By individual members. And also we are saying that according to the Cooperative Societies Act, for this particular cooperative society to be formed, it must be formed, or basically it is formed by a minimum of 10 qualified members, or basically 10 qualified persons. Number 2, we have something called the secondary cooperative society, or basically we can refer to it as the cooperative union. Cooperative union. In other terms, it can also be known as a secondary society, or a secondary cooperative society. And this is a particular cooperative society which will be formed by 2 or more primary societies. So mean that members of 2 or more primary societies may come together and they decide to register now a certain cooperative society. That cooperative society now which will be registered, or basically which will be formed, then we say it is formed by a primary society. So therefore, cooperative union is that particular cooperative society which is formed by 2 or more primary societies. 2 or more primary societies. Number 3, or the other type of cooperative society is something known as the cooperative union. Cooperative union. So when talk about the cooperative union, this refers to that particular cooperative society which is formed at the national level, basically to promote the growth and the development of what we refer as the cooperative union. So therefore, it is formed at the national level. The objective of forming this particular cooperative society is to promote the growth and the development of cooperative union. A good example of this particular cooperative society in Kenya is what we refer as Cusco. Cusco basically is a cooperative society which is formed at the national level to be able to promote the growth and development of cooperative union. So we can say yes. So therefore, what we refer as a cooperative union. Okay, cooperative union. We can use the word Apex Society. Let's rename this. The appropriate name for that, sorry, should be Apex Society. Apex Society, sorry for that, not cooperative union. So therefore, Apex Society, we are saying, is a particular cooperative society which will be formed at the national level to be able to promote now the growth and also the development of what we refer as the cooperative union. So therefore, according to the Cooperative Societies Act, we have those 3 types of cooperative societies which may be formed and also registered in accordance now with the Cooperative Societies Act. Now, our main focus here, as the topic suggests, is basically preparation of a financial statement of cooperative societies. And therefore, which are the financial statements which are prepared by a cooperative society? So we can look on those corporate financial statements. Financial statement prepared, financial statement prepared by cooperative societies. Cooperative societies. First of all, it is important to note here that when we talk about the financial statement, we are talking of the final accounts which are prepared by cooperative societies at the end of the year to basically ascertain their performance, to ascertain their financial position. In this case, we have 3 final accounts, 3 financial statements which are prepared by the cooperative societies, and those financial statements include, number 1, what we refer as the income statement. Income statement, which is also known as a statement of profit or loss. And number 2, we have what we refer as the appropriation account. appropriation account. And number 3, we have a statement of financial position. Statement of financial position. So these are the final accounts which any cooperative society need to prepare at the end of the year. So let's start by looking on what is an income statement and why a cooperative society need to prepare the income statement. So number 1, we have the income statement, which we also referring to a statement of a profit or loss. And as the name suggests, a statement of a profit or loss, or basically what you're referring to as an income statement, this one is prepared to determine the performance of a cooperative society. So mean that in preparing the income statement or the statement of profit or loss, basically what the cooperative society will be doing is basically comparing the income of a given financial year and what refer as what? The expenses or the expenditures incurred during that year. Any difference between the two is actually a profit or what? Or a loss. So therefore you can say that this is prepared. It is prepared to ascertain financial performance. Financial performance of a cooperative society. Of a cooperative society. In other terms, we can say just prepare to ascertain the profit or loss of a cooperative society in a given financial year. So how do we prepare, or how is this statement of a profit or loss presented? So let's look on the format or the layout of what if as a statement of profit or loss. Statement of profit stroke loss. Automatically the one is prepared for a certain year. Yes, so here always we start by recording incomes of the cooperative society. Incomes of the cooperative society. A cooperative society may have various sources of incomes, including things like investment income, and we prepare this account on using vertical format. So a cooperative society may be having something like investment income, things like interest on loans to members. So whenever a cooperative society gives members loans, like a SACCO, the cooperative society, or basically the SACCO, will charge some interest. That interest is basically what? An income. So also a cooperative society may be having the other source of income like entrance fees. If you are you want to join a cooperative society, you may be required to pay some fee. So these are some of the good examples of the incomes of a cooperative society, and then from there you get incomes, the total incomes, and then out to this we proceed and less the expenditures. Less the expenditures, or basically the expenses of the cooperative society. And here we basically deduct now the expenses incurred by the cooperative society in a given financial year. This will include things like maybe salaries and wages to the staff, things like management committee allowances, So a cooperative society is managed by a top organ known as management committee. Things like what? The interest on members' deposit. Cooperative societies, mostly SACCOs, they pay interest which is based on members' deposit, because the SACCOs want to encourage members to continue saving with that SACCO. So at the end of each year, as a member, you are paid some interest which is based on your what? On your deposit. So we take into account that. Then we also take into account other expenses like rent, etc. So we take into account all the expenses of the cooperative society, and we less that now from the total the total income. So whatever you get here is now the profit for the year. The profit for the year. So that's how a statement of profit or loss or an income statement of a cooperative society is presented or is what prepared. So next, let's look on what is the appropriation account and why an appropriation account is prepared. Yes, number 2, we have a appropriation account. Appropriation account. So as the name suggests, this is basically an account or a final account which is prepared by cooperative societies to show how the profit for the year is supposed to be distributed to the various stakeholders. For example, this account is prepared to show how much amount was paid to the members as dividends and also how much amount was set aside as statutory reserve fund. Now, it is important here for you to note that under the Cooperative Societies Act, cooperative societies, mostly SACCOs, are required to set aside 20% of their profit as a statutory reserve fund. So therefore, that amount which has been transferred from the profit to the statutory reserve fund, in accordance with the Cooperative Societies Act, it is also shown in this particular account. And therefore, we can say that yes, so this one is prepared to show how the profit for the year was distributed to various stakeholders in form of dividend, in form of transfer to the statutory reserve fund, and so on. So how do we prepare this particular account here? So we can look on the format of the appropriation account. Appropriation account. Yes, so in preparing the appropriation account here, always you start with that particular profit for the year, which was determined after preparing now the income statement. Profit for the year, that's what we start with always. And then to this, we proceed and we less dividends which were paid. So if there are some dividends now which were paid, we come, we less those particular dividends here. We also deduct the transfer to the statutory reserve fund, and in this case I've said that the statutory reserve fund, the amount to be transferred to the statutory reserve fund, this one according to the Cooperative Societies Act is always 20% of the profit, 20% of the profit for the year. So the examiner may have given that particular information to you, but equally, if you're given a question for cooperative society, that information still is missing, you have to note that 20% is a must, that 20% of the profit for the year must be transferred to something called the statutory reserve fund. And then after deducting those two items, what we do is that we get now the retained profit for the year. The retained profit for the year. The retained profit for the year. To this retained profit for the year, we add the retained profit balance brought down. The retained profit balance brought down. This is the profit which was retained in the previous year. And then whatever you get down here is the retained profit, which is also known as the appropriation account balance. Appropriation account balance carried down. And this particular balance which we have here, this one will be transferred to the statement of financial position as a component of equity. So this one is transferred to statement of financial position as a component, of equity. As a component of what? Equity. So basically that's how the appropriation account is prepared. You can see it is basically prepared to show how now the profit for the year, the profit which was reported during the year was distributed now to the various stakeholders. Finally, I want us to look on how we prepare the statement of financial position. So number 3, statement of financial position. Now, when talk about this one, statement of financial position, formerly known as the balance sheet, this one is prepared to show the financial position of a cooperative society at the end of the year. In other terms, this is a statement of asset, liabilities, and equity, and this one always has to be prepared based on something known as the accounting equation. So we can say that this. Yes, so therefore this is a statement of cooperative societies assets, liabilities, and equity as at the end of the year. As at the end of the year. On the other hand, we can say that it is prepared based on the accounting equation. Yes, so therefore this one we prepare it based on the accounting equation. The accounting equation is an equation which states that assets are equal to capital plus liabilities. Equal to capital plus liabilities. So let's look on the format, how we prepare a statement of financial position. And actually this one we abbreviated as SOFP, statement of financial position, which is prepared as at the end of the year. Prepared as at the end of the year. So always we start by recording assets. And when preparing a statement of financial position for a cooperative society, is not a must. There is no need of classifying the asset into non-current and current. Just like what the banks do, we record the asset of the cooperative society starting from those assets which are liquid. When talk about assets which are liquid, we are talking of asset in form of cash, and then followed by those assets which are highly liquid, those assets which can be converted into cash within a short period of time, and finally we record now the long-term asset like the PPE and so on. So therefore, we start by recording assets. In this case, I've said we don't classify the asset into non-current and what? Current. So when recording the asset, what is important here is you start with most liquid assets. Most liquid assets, and finally record long-term assets. So meaning that here we start by recording things like the cash and bank balance, and then next we record things like investments. We also record things like loans to members. Whenever something like a SACCO has given the members some loan, that is an asset. The cooperative society expects the members to repay back those particular loan, and then you finally record the long-term asset, such as now the PPE, property, plant, and equipment. So therefore, I've said here, no need of classifying the asset into non-current and current. And then from there, get the total assets. Next, we record now the capital and the liabilities. And remember what I've said is that the cooperative society here do have the same status just like a company. So therefore, for capital, we record or the capital, which is also known as equity. This comprises of share capital, things like members' deposit, and the reserves. So therefore, let's look on what we record under equity. So next we record equity. And equity, I've said that this comprises of share capital and what? Reserve. So we record the share capital. Share capital. We also have the members' deposit. The members' deposit. So it is important to note that if maybe the cooperative society we are dealing with is something like a SACCO, members will have made some deposit with such a SACCO. But generally, as a member of a SACCO, you can't be able to withdraw that particular amount of money anytime you want. So you can only be able to get back that particular amount of money if now you do what? You want to quit from that particular cooperative society. So mean that particular amount of money which you have deposited with your SACCO remain with the SACCO. The SACCO uses that as capital because mostly SACCOs use that money in terms of giving loans to members. And that's why you can see we are treating that as part of capital. As part of what? Capital. So we record other items of equity like the statutory reserve fund, statutory reserve fund. I've mentioned something to do with this. And then things like the appropriation account, and other reserves like the revaluation reserves, etc. Yes, so those are the various items of equity. And then get the total equity there. Get the total equity. And finally, record liabilities. Equally here, when recording the liabilities of a cooperative society, no need of classifying them into non-current and also what? Current. You just record all the liabilities here, which include things like what? Things like creditors. Things like creditors, the amount of money which is owed to the creditors, any accrued expense, etc. Yes. So record all those particular liabilities there and then proceed. You get what? The total equity and liabilities. Total equity and liabilities. And whatever you get here is the total equity and liabilities, always it must be equal to the total asset, simply because we prepare that statement of financial position based on the accounting equation which states that assets are equal to capital plus what? Liability. So therefore, that's how we prepare or basically present this particular statement of financial position of a cooperative society. So that brings us to the end of that session. In our next session, still in this on this particular subtopic here, we are going to look on an illustration question regarding presentation or preparation of financial statement of a cooperative society. So see you in the next class.